All right, let's dive into the incredible Maya civilization and tackle one of the most fascinating theories about where they came from. Were their gods just myths, or were they visitors from the stars? We're going to unpack all the clues. Our story kicks off right here, in the amazing ruins of Copan, Honduras. For centuries, this place was a powerhouse, a thriving cultural center they called the Paris of Mesoamerica. I mean, at its peak, you had 20,000 people living here. But then, around the 9th century, they just left. The whole city was abandoned. So why'd they leave? Well, the official story points to the usual suspects. Environmental collapse, too much warfare. But ancient astronaut theorists, they look at the clues carved in stone and say, hold on a second. They believe the official story is missing a huge piece of the puzzle, a piece that might not be from around here. And that's where this whole theory begins, with the clues they carved in stone. The Maya left behind this absolutely stunning artistic record, but it's what they depicted that has kicked off a huge debate. If you look really closely at the statues in Copan, you start to see something weird. According to the theorists, you're not just looking at kings in fancy ceremonial outfits. They argue these figures are decked out in some seriously complex gear, stuff that looks almost technical, with boxes and tubes and buttons. And for the theorists, this isn't some metaphor or symbol. No, they see a straight-up depiction of a being wearing a suit. For them, this is Exhibit A for ancient astronauts, actual visitors from another world who came here long, long ago. But it gets even stranger. The source also flags other carvings that just don't seem to fit. Right there in Copan, you've got these dragon sculptures that look like they belong in ancient China. And then, are those elephants? I mean, elephants have never lived in Central America. Sure, mainstream experts say they could be stylized macaws or tapirs, but the theorists? They think this points to a much bigger global connection. So that's the big question, right? How does a civilization in Mesoamerica know about Asian dragons or African elephants? It leads theorists to ask something really provocative. What if these ancient cultures weren't isolated at all? What if they were all connected by flying machines piloted by extraterrestrials? And this idea of an advanced shared influence, it's not just about art. Now we're getting into the really mind-blowing stuff, the Maya's knowledge. Their grasp of science and math was so far advanced, it just seems impossible for them to have figured it all out on their own. I mean, these guys were geniuses, absolute masters of math and astronomy. They invented the concept of zero and place value, something very few ancient cultures did, and they used it to track the stars with insane accuracy. Get this, their calendar for the planet Venus was so precise, it was only off by a couple of hours over 6,000 years. That's just incredible. But even that kind of pales in comparison to their biggest achievement, at least according to the source. They somehow understood an astronomical cycle that takes 26,000 years to complete. Just let that number sink in for a second. 26,000 years. This whole thing is called precession. Basically, the Earth has this tiny wobble as it spins, kind of like a toy top that's slowing down. Now, here's the kicker. To watch that wobble make one full circle and map it out, you'd need to be watching the sky, non-stop, for 26,000 years. So you see the problem, right? How in the world did they know this? The entire Mayan civilization wasn't around for anywhere near that long. They would have needed tens of thousands of years of constant observation. So if they couldn't have figured this out just by watching the sky, where did they get this information? Well, if you can't figure it out yourself, maybe somebody or something gave it to you. That's what the theorists suggest. And this is where we start to see a fascinating link between their ancient myths and actual modern science. It's like there was real technology behind their spiritual beliefs. Check this out. Back in 2000, some miners in Mexico digging 1,000 feet down accidentally broke into this, the Cave of Crystals, an absolutely stunning cavern filled with giant crystals, some as big as a car that are 500,000 years old. Now, why does this matter? Well, theorists immediately connected this to ancient beliefs that crystals were sacred, that they were tools for talking to the gods. And here's where it gets really cool. The source points out this amazing parallel. The ancient belief, crystals hold power. Modern science, we use quartz crystals in literally everything from watches to computers because they can store incredible amounts of data. It's almost like Superman's fortress of solitude. The theorists wonder, what if these caves weren't just pretty? What if they were ancient hard drives storing alien knowledge? This whole idea ties directly into the Popol Vuh, which is like the Mayas' sacred book. Now, historians see it as their creation myth, stories. But ancient astronaut theorists, they read it and see something else entirely. They think it's not a myth, but a history book, a record of these otherworldly gods actually interacting with people and changing the course of our history. And all of this leads us to the big guy, the most important god in the whole Mayan pantheon. This is the figure who connects all the dots, from the weird carvings to the super advanced knowledge. His name was Kukulkan, the great feathered serpent. And the Mayan texts are pretty clear about him. He came down from the sky. He was the one who taught them everything, all their math, their astronomy, their science. And then, once he was done teaching, he left, promising that one day he'd come back from the stars. But here's the thing that's really wild. This story, a serpent or dragon god who comes from the sky and brings knowledge, it's not just a Maya thing. Not even close. You see it in Peru with Quetzalcoatl, in India with the serpent-like Nagas, in China with their flying dragons. We're talking cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years, all telling the same basic story. How is that possible? For the theorists, this is the smoking gun. This isn't just a coincidence. They argue these ancient people weren't making up stories about flying snakes. No way. They were describing something they actually saw. They were trying to explain technology they couldn't understand, vehicles coming down from the sky, and beings stepping out to teach them. For them, there's no other explanation. So, when you put it all together, you've got stone carvings of what look like astronauts, you've got astronomical knowledge that seems impossible for them to have, and you've got this worldwide myth of a serpent god coming from the stars. It all builds to one single, provocative question. Were the gods who gave the Maya all their wisdom visitors from another world?